Welcome to another TMG interview. My name is Paul Preston, talking movies with those who make them. And today I'm sharing virtual space with the directors of a new short film that you can see right now. Now, a lot of times, a short film's path from completion to your eyeballs, you never know where it's going to go, how you can possibly see it. But you can watch this one right now, and I'll tell you where it's online. But more on that later. But for now, more on the film itself. The film is Eco Hack, and I'm here with the co-producers and co-directors, Brett Marty and Josh Izenberg.
Thanks for having me.
So just for the folks who are listening and not watching this on YouTube, Brett, why don't you go ahead and say hello to the people so they can gauge your voice?
Hey, nice to be here.
Outstanding. And Josh.
Okay, this is Josh.
That is Josh.
Good to be here with you, Paul.
All right, so whichever one of you would like to take the reins on the first question, obviously as the co-directors and co-producers of this film, you are much more qualified than I to tell the people what Eco Hack is about. So please tell us, and who is Tim Shields?
Well, Tim. Well, let me start with Tim. Tim Shields is a tortoise biologist who lives half the year in the Mojave Desert, east of LA. And he has been working to try to save the desert tortoise for 30, 40 years. He's sort of devoted his entire career to this creature. The film catches up with Tim in a particular project that sort of started in the last 10 years where Tim, he's tired of watching the tortoise population in decline. These tortoises have been under threat from a whole variety of different adversaries, from disease to burgeoning human population encroachment, all sorts of things. But the latest threat is raven population that's really gone out of control in the desert thanks to human populations that sort of brought along our trash and our compost and all these things that sort of help the raven population thrive. Well, these ravens love to eat baby tortoises. They've been a major threat, and Tim is trying to figure out how can he stop being the biologist who is, as he says, quietly taking notes in the catastrophe, and how can he intervene and do something to save the tortoises and deal with this raven threat. And the film is really about what he does, and he uses technology and imagination and kind of crazy out-of-the-box thinking to deal with these ravens and create, if you will, a template for how biologists and engineers and conservationists might intervene on behalf of other species under threat all over the world. So that's the story in a nutshell. Happy to kind of get more into it, but that's the high-level view.
Well, I'm super impressed that he doesn't kill them. He doesn't set out to kill the ravens. I mean, out here, it's been in the news in Los Angeles that they're going to start controlling the mule deer population in Catalina by just flying over with a helicopter and picking them off. And there's got to be a better way. Maybe one, of course, could be controlling the human population first. Right. But yeah, so I was pretty impressed that he does that. So what he does instead is, in the New Yorker had a great title of the page where you can watch. That's where you can watch the film, at the New Yorker's website. And they have the great title for the page where the film is embedded, and it's "Can you save one species by annoying another?" So that's essentially what he does. He annoys the birds without having to kill them, and I'm super impressed by that. Can you elaborate the ways that he does that?
Sure. And I think there's a really good reason he does that too. It's like Tim says, a live raven is better than a dead raven. And it's because they're incredibly smart social animals. So he uses aversive training to basically create nightmare scenarios for ravens near tortoise habitat. So
I love that. It's called he calls it a haunted landscape in the film, which is just like
the man can turn a phrase. That's
a
for
lot.
Sure. Yeah. And so he does this just with lasers and exploding tortoise shells and drones and all sorts of funny tech tools. And the idea is that the ravens teach each other and they interact. So when one, sees this bright laser cannon being fired at them repeatedly in the spot, they learn from each other. And if you can see, even in the film, when one raven takes off and is like worried, oh, I saw something, and even if the others didn't see it, they're like, oh, there's something to panic about, we better panic too. So that's his philosophy, that even though these ravens shouldn't be there, and they wouldn't be there without human encroachment out into the desert, they they can learn from each other. So he doesn't have to teach them all or kill them, and in fact the live ones can teach each other. So he doesn't have to train every single raven to stay away from this land. They can learn from each other.
Yeah, when the Raven's smarter than a person in a horror movie. It sees the haunted house and goes, "Well, we're out of here," right? As opposed to
That's
hanging out
totally true. Totally true.
longer than
That's
they should.
exactly right.
So how does the New Yorker then become your distribution platform for this film? Did you team with them beforehand, or did they find you and then want to profile the movie after you made it?
Well, we had a pre-existing relationship with them before, so we'd done another film called The Fiddler with them back in 2018, kind of at the beginning, very early in their kind of showcasing of documentary films, and they do a lot more of that now. So we'd worked with them before, and we'd finished the film just about, and then reached out to them like, "Hey, we're about to finish the film, looking for a platform." And for someone to basically get it to a wide audience, it's important for we do these stories because we want them to have an impact, especially for shorts. There's not that many places where short films can live and people watch them, so we want people to hear what Tim's doing and to be inspired by it, and hopefully think about conservation a little differently, and really kind of kind of approach climate stories with like a different way. When we intentionally wanted to make this one, not gloomy and full of dread, but kind of fun and funny and inspiring.
Yeah. So, and I noticed, that there was a previous short that you had made, Brett, that was involved with the New Yorker, and Josh, I believe you made one that was aligned with the New York Times. And I'll be honest with you, as much as I watch movies, the whole using a print publication to find a short film model is kind of new to me. So you say it's a thing and it's out there. So how does that all work? Or I guess explain that whole situation to me.
The ecosystem that we're in, I'm not going to get all the exact dates right of who started doing what when exactly, but like my understanding of it is, in 2013, 2012, New York Times started doing this OpDoc series where they'd commission or license short documentaries from filmmakers that sort of aligned with their opinion section, like it was somebody's point of view. And that was successful. And that was like a whole new way for short films, short documentaries specifically, to reach wide audiences. And I think a lot of other, what you'd think of as print publications have done their version of that. And so like the New Yorker, LA Times has a documentary series. The list is going to go on. I'm not going to be able to name everybody, but it's different than what we sort of, where were short films prior to that? I don't know. There wasn't necessarily a lot of online venues for short films. And that's sort of been a problem because short film is a great medium, but there just wasn't a lot of space for them. And so like, there's a lot of people who are getting into the short documentary programming world now who weren't there before. And hopefully that trend continues. And so the New Yorker, they make a lot of, they make, license, acquire, distribute a lot of short films, fiction, animation, and documentary. So we've worked with different organizations in the past, but it's just served as a great opportunity because, HBO, Netflix, Amazon, they don't necessarily have, they may only have so much room for short content. So it's good there's other players in the game now. And hopefully we just see more and more different opportunities for short filmmakers.
Yeah, sometimes they go online and they can get lost, in the muddle of 5 billion things to watch on YouTube or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's tough to just put something. I think people maybe have thought, in the past, if you put something really good on YouTube and just it'll like get legs and go viral, but like it's really God, I don't think it works like that. You need it's very helpful to have somebody supporting you.
Yeah.
In doing that.
So. Give a shout out to Vimeo Staff Picks as one of the early places that was able to draw attention to short films, both narrative.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Where it's like, if you go there, that they kind of curate high quality. So you really, and they have really good taste. So they basically anything you watch there is going to be pretty good.
Well, twist my arm to get a new way to watch shorts. I mean, I have an LA Times subscription, so I guess I haven't thoroughly investigated that to see what's in there that I could watch as well as read. So Tim teams up with Frank Guercio, right?
Yeah.
Who rightfully calls himself like the Q of Tim's James Bond, because they make these wacky contraptions. They have cool names like the Techno Tort and the Blastolux. And I love the gadgets. And again, just also because it's a bloodless way of changing the atmosphere and keeping the turtles alive. So let's look at some of them. Egg oiling. What is this? I mean, I know what it is, but for those who want to get clued into the short, what is egg oiling?
Egg oiling is literally putting oil on raven eggs before they hatch, and they don't hatch. So bloodless, sort of. I mean, the ravens,
yeah, well, I guess
the ravens aren't going to, the baby ravens don't survive. But it has the benefit ultimately of the, the adults. These are smart birds. Like when they have a round or two of eggs that don't hatch, they say, you know what, this isn't a good place to lay eggs, and they go somewhere else and they lay their eggs elsewhere. So that's what egg oiling does. It just sort of, and the technology in use is these kind of long, little, I guess they're almost like squirt guns that squirt oil. They're the end of long sticks, or they use drones sometimes, and there's some use of AI and other things to sort of determine where these nests are in the first place, because half the battle is even finding the raven nests. They put the nests on billboards and on top of, they put them everywhere, and they're hard to see. And so there's certain mapping technology that can look at like an array of sticks on the ground and sort of suggest, hey, maybe this is a place where ravens are spending time. There might be a nest here. So, Tim and his group go out during nesting season and they try to oil these eggs and get the ravens to go somewhere else to lay their eggs.
Laser pointers. Like, I'm annoyed by laser pointers. I guess it really bothers ravens.
Yeah, I wouldn't really think of it as a laser pointer, because it's like a class 4 laser, is high powered as they come. So it'll blind you in a few seconds if it's in your eye. I guess a laser pointer would too, but it would just probably take longer. But they're very bright and they go a very long way. And so what they have is basically, I like to think of them as laser guns, laser cannons, and they look like it too, intentionally, because I think they're both pretty big fans of sci-fi and that sort of thing. So they'll go out to a valley with a lot of ravens, and you can fire it. And Josh and I got to do it a couple times. It's kind of like a video game. It's super fun. And if you just fire it a couple of times, the ravens will just leave. They feel like something's wrong. They don't like it. And once, I think Tim said that we don't exactly know how ravens perceive it, but it's not like a flash of light like it is to us. For whatever reason, to them, I think the theory is it looks like a giant glowing piece of rebar flying through the sky that just like doesn't feel safe to them. So and then they can do all sorts of things with that, whether put it on like a remotely controlled laser turret, or maybe one day have it fire autonomously, basically when a little machine can detect a raven is nearby.
And I love the fake tortoises, but I won't talk about what those do, because that's my favorite part, and people can go discover that in the film itself. It's just like how he even discovered what he can spray from these fake tortoises that would deter the ravens. Like, I don't even know how you determined that, but he did, and it works. Anyway, go watch that for that. All the gadgets are, and basically nature's good in nature, but now booby traps are part of it, thanks to Tim, which I think is hilarious. You guys ever see a turtle in the wild before this film? I saw one when I was in Saguaro National Park, and it was the coolest thing I saw in the park all day. I mean, I just watched him for 20 minutes and doing his thing, and eventually ventured off out of sight, and I just thought he was cool as hell.
Yeah, I actually saw one. I got married in Joshua Tree. I live in the Bay Area. And the hour before my wedding, I went on, maybe 2 hours before the wedding, I went on a little hike around the area and saw a desert tortoise walking around. And the people I was with saw the tortoise too. And it was like, somebody I knew who lived out in the desert was like, people live out here their whole lives and don't necessarily see a tortoise. So I felt pretty lucky.
I've never seen out there. I've never seen the bighorn sheep. They keep giving you signs about, oh yeah, look out for bighorn sheep here in Joshua Tree. Nope, never seen them.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how animals are so good at hiding from humans. It's kind of shocking.
And there's not that many of them left.
That too, yeah.
Probably true, yeah. But speaking of that, so I love stories from the trenches with Indian short films like this. What are the setbacks you guys had that you had to pivot or change things up because it could be animals. Oh, these animals are going to be here. We're going to do this big thing. Well, the animals aren't there. They decided to do whatever they wanted to do. They are not aware of our shooting schedule, or perhaps weather was unkind because you got the desert to deal with. Anything that you can share?
Yeah, well, it's not that novel, but COVID certainly threw things for a loop.
True.
So
Yeah.
we had to, it ended up being actually probably beneficial for the film because it gave us, made us take a break for a while and gave the film some longitude. So some things got to develop and change a little bit. So we had to add a little bit more than we might have otherwise. We might have wrapped production a little sooner. Josh, do we have any other big hiccups?
Yeah, to set the stage, like filming in the desert in the winter is hard, and it's windy, and it's pretty brutal, and you have to walk a lot with a lot of film equipment, and you hope you find a tortoise. However, that said, like we kind of accounted for that. We're documentary filmmakers who do stuff in the field, quote unquote, so we've been all over the place. We sort of baked that in. We really were incredibly lucky in that on one day we found 2 wild tortoises with Tim and his crew, and we were able to film that. So we weren't guaranteed finding any wild tortoises while filming. And so that was like amazing. So, in some ways, a lot of things really went our way. I think one of the biggest challenges was figuring out how to tell the story. This is like, it's going to take Tim quite a long time before he has definitive proof and numbers that say, without a doubt, the work that he's doing has saved X amount of tortoises, or it's, deterred X amount of ravens. I mean, he has evidence. So, but we weren't able to sort of include that in the film. So it was like, how do we tell a story where we can show this thing that these people are doing to save these animals, but the future is sort of unwritten. Like the end of the film isn't going to happen within the actual like filmmaking, I guess, timeline that we had. So, we tried to tell the story in a way that left room for hope and for positivity without, definitively saying, here's the result of Tim's work. So, in some ways that was like the biggest challenge, even though it's not like an in the trenches challenge. It's more of a at the computer after you're done filming kind of challenge.
He just recently, I guess last year, got a grant from the National Science Foundation to continue his research. And I think this film will help, right? I mean, I imagine he'll take it and show it to people to get more money and to get more staff or team or whatever he wants to do with it. Do you feel like you're helping in that respect?
Yeah, I think Tim says it's made a big impact on, just people. It played at, I don't know, probably close to 40 film festivals at this point, and people, after everyone, someone comes up to Tim and wants to talk to him, or has an idea or a new species that they want to adapt his technology to. And it's, running a small crew like that out in the desert and finding funding is never easy, but he's making it work. And I think he's got some pretty good stuff coming down the pipe, and probably some big funding coming his way.
Well, best documentary short at Palm Springs International Short Fest, best documentary short at Hot Docs International in Toronto. Now, looks like you're qualified for Oscar contention, so that could be in the horizon as well.
Yeah, we are qualified. There's a series of steps that have to happen between being qualified and being nominated and so forth. But we're, we got our fingers crossed. We're honored that we're qualified. We're honored that we got as far as we did with this film. And yeah, we really hope that we can kind of continue on the journey with it, because I think it's making a difference, in some way. You never know. It's like just seeding an idea about how conservation could work with people. So we want as many people as possible to see this,
and especially young people. We've shown it to a few younger, like middle schools and things like that, and you just kind of hope that they really love watching it and think it's really interesting. But you gotta hope you're planting a seed somewhere in the back of someone's brain of like, oh, you know what, I want to play with lasers and make things explode in order to like save the planet at the same time. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I would like to do gadgets for more than just battle bots. I may have just aged myself, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
And please win, because get nominated and win the Oscar, because I appreciate all the docs out there that are heavy, and this one obviously has a message about our impact on the climate and the environment. But man, there's a lot of depressing shorts out there. I would like to see one about this like eclectic guy who does this unique thing that you can't find anywhere else in the world. I mean, no one's doing what Tim does, right?
No, not exactly. I mean, there are probably other people using technology to try to save species, but I think Tim is like, sort of unique in that just the lengths to which his imagination, him and Frank together, has gone to kind of build gadgets to help the tortoises. I think that he's completely unique. However, what he's doing, you could like transport that to so many different conservation issues all over the world. Like every species that's under threat by something else could use a Tim and a Frank. So, our hope is like there's biologists out there who are like, maybe there's a version of the exploding technotort or the Blastolux laser gun that could help me insert threatened species here, whatever it is. And so, yeah, that's what, we really, to your point about depressing documentaries, I mean, we, with all due respect to those films, because there's a lot of depressing things out there.
Yeah.
We're not totally convinced that depressing people gets them to do anything. It can be pretty paralyzing. So, our theory right now and our hope is that a fun, inspiring approach to a conservation problem can, actually galvanize more action. So we'll see, but that's our position. So that's Tim's position too.
Watching it at a bunch of film festivals, it always get programmed in like a environmental block most of the time, and a lot of those, just like you said, are kind of heavy and depressing, and rightfully so, because a lot of the problems that these really great films are highlighting are really heavy, depressing problems. And it's always fun when our film came around later in the programming, and people were like, the first joke that comes off and everyone's gonna look at each other like, oh, are we supposed to laugh? And then they're like, oh yeah, you have permission to laugh. And then they it's kind of fun to have a film and like to give people within that block, after watching some heavier stuff, like, oh, here's a breath of fresh air a little bit. And so it was kind of fun to like have that piece that mixes it up a little bit.
Yeah, I saw a documentary once about dogs who got euthanized in a shelter because we're not doing right by them and all this. But literally the last line before the credits was, "What are you going to do about it?" And I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, that's almost like that's like the kind of, it's almost become a caricature of what a documentary is now. And like, it would be nice to see that change a little bit. Like, I think a lot of people still think documentaries are these like the equivalent of having to eat your vegetables. It's like, yeah, okay, like you've had your fun watching your horror movie and your thriller. Okay, now you got to watch something super heavy about how crappy reality is. And, and it's like, look, like, I think at this point, like, people know that. We know the world is pretty messed up now. Okay, we're here. Where are we going to go from here? What can we do that's exciting, that's going to make the world better? And, maybe that's a simplistic way of looking at it, but like, it's more fun as a filmmaker, I think, to be, at least for us, to be in that place. This was a really fun film to work on, a really fun film to make, inspired us. I feel like I'm actually hopeful. I think there could be more tortoises in 20 years than there are now. So that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it's got to be good. Feel good to be a part of that. If that change, should it happen, and we hope it does. Yeah. But before I let you gentlemen go, I do ask this question of everybody. It's the worst question of all time. And Josh, or whoever would like to answer first. What is your favorite movie of all time?
Brett, you can take that first.
Oh, God. Yeah, it is the worst question. I actually have a really, really interesting story that I'll tell you instead, which is kind of funny. I considered almost going to grad school for film. And I was at one of the bigger schools that I was like really honored to get a call-in interview at. And so, I was one of the finalists to get into this really amazing grad school program. And the interview went super well. And the professors, I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm meeting you. And we're having a great conversation. I was like, holy cow, I'm going to get in. And then one of their last questions was like, what are your 3 favorite movies? And I was like, I have no, I just froze for a second. And then I don't even know what I said, but needless to say, I didn't get in.
Hey, listen, 3 is generous. That's why I say 1. And every time I say, what's your favorite, people cheat and give me like 5 anyway. And cheating's fine.
Yeah.
But if my favorite movie of all time is Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it will never change. That's going to be number 1. It's been with me for so long. As much as I love La La Land, Captain Phillips, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, anything new, No Country for Old Men, these are all great movies. I will not, and the documentaries I just saw at Telluride and went there for the first time in my life, back to your neck of the woods, the featured docs that came out of there, crushed. They were amazing.
Mhm.
And it's not going to beat Raiders. It's just been with me for too long. So, but you put Pulp Fiction on right now, I might go, wow, that's the greatest movie I've ever seen. So the rules are nebulous, but I do have to ask because it's always such torture. Josh, did you have enough time to waste to think of something?
Sure, I'll throw a few things out there just to, this is my non-answer answer. Like the movie, my favorite movie, I couldn't even begin to tell you. There's so many, I don't have that kind of brain that's like this is the favorite. But the movie that I think I saw when I was kind of like thinking about actually getting into making movies and maybe even being a documentary filmmaker was this movie called The Cruise, about this tour bus driver in New York who just sort of spends the entirety of the movie philosophizing and talking about New York and his love for New York. And I don't live in New York, but I just was like, oh, wow, this is a documentary. It can be this. It can just be like somebody's innermost thoughts and feelings in this kind of wild short ride. Like that one, I think, you know, shortly after that, I saw The Thin Blue Line by Errol Morris. And around that same time, I saw Fitzcarraldo by Werner Herzog, which is not a documentary, but I sort of think of it, he's a documentarian as well. So I think those three movies are just like kind of part of a package that let me think, you know what, documentary could be a really fun world that I'd like to immerse myself in. So I will credit those movies in part to sort of inspiring me to make these kinds of films. So I'll just say that.
Cool. Yeah. Respect. Fitzcarraldo. That's cool. Yeah, Werner Herzog was at Telluride, and I just about passed out just to hear him talk about movies. It was so cool, you know. And whatever movie it was, he found like the isolation of humanity in it, whatever it was, you know.
Yeah,
and that's just what you want from him, right?
Yeah, he's having adventures and making movies at the same time. I think like Brett and I aspire to like, you know, we like the idea that like the filmmaking process is going to take us into some sort of extreme environments, maybe not Antarctica, but like, you know, maybe the middle of the desert, maybe the jungle somewhere. And so we've had a little taste of that. And that's been a really great part of doing what we do.
Well, gentlemen, that's I appreciate you making the film, first of all, and I appreciate that we can all see it. So let me tell you where. Just go to the New Yorker's website, and the length of it is like newyorker.com/ what did I say? Can you save one species by annoying it? Basically, just search it. If you search Eco Hack at the New Yorker, pops right up, and you can watch it immediately. Thanks to Brett and Josh. And if you want to follow everything that the Movie Guys are up to, Twitter at the Movie Guys, Facebook Movie Guys, Instagram the Movie Guys, all that, plus YouTube, iTunes, everywhere you can find audio podcasts, we're there. Any other plugs you want to give me, social media or anything like that?
Look up Eco Hack, you'll find us, you'll find Tim, you'll find the movie. So yeah,
cool. And of course you can follow everything we're up to at themovieguyz.net. Thank you, gentlemen.
Right, okay, thank you. Yeah, really appreciate it.